Listen up! I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon, published by Simon & Schuster Saga Press. Today I'll be reviewing one of the Dresden Files novels by Jim Butcher. Now, if you've been following these reviews, you know I reviewed Book 1, Book 2, and Book 3. Now I'm going to skip all the way to Book number 12, Changes. Why am I skipping 8 books in the series and jumping all the way to book number 12? Well, quite frankly, I've been collecting these books since 2004 and reading them, so I've already read each one of them one time each. So these are more of like a reread for me. And so book 16 is coming out in July, and I just didn't have time, because this is the middle of June now, I just didn't have time to read all the books up until, so I'm going to skip the middle 8 and jump straight to book number 12. Then I'll do 13, 14, and 15. And then the new book will be released, number 16, and I will get to that then. So, what have I learned having read all these books before? You know, I read them when they came out, and I read them all once, and I have not reread them until this review series. So I'm kind of glad I'm doing it this way. I'm kind of glad I'm skipping the middle 8 books, because one thing I learned after reading and reviewing the first 3 books and then jumping all the way to book number 12 is there is a drastic, in my opinion, shift in quality that takes place in those 8 books. Now, I'm assuming had I read each one of them concurrently all the way to 12, I would have not have noticed the shift that much. It would have been more of a subtle shift. Now it's kind of more of a jarring shift. I mean, his writing gets so much better. Book 1, 2, 3, they were great books. Book 12, OMG. I remember reading these books back when they were coming out, and I remember reading Changes and thinking, okay, this is the novel where epic really gets epic. This is the novel where the Dresden Files really raise the stakes. That's kind of why I didn't want to skip over this one. I wanted to start here and read until the end. Changes, man, I gotta tell you, the writing style is better. The jokes are funnier. The characters, he brings all the characters back in a much, much, much more satisfactory way than any of the previous novels. Like I said, I'm not knocking the other novels at all. If you know, I gave good reviews to the 3 that I reviewed, the first 3 that he did. Changes, though, man, it changes everything. It really does. And let me tell you something. If you're not familiar, if this is the first review you've ever book review you ever watched on YouTube about a Jim Butcher novel, let me just tell you a little bit of the background of the Dresden Files. Just think of those old noirish detectives in the 50s, you know, like the Maltese Falcon or Raymond Chandler, and you know, even some of the detectives nowadays, you know, like Harry Bosch and that, combined with like a lot of wizardry and Harry Potter magic. And that's kind of what we're dealing with. Harry Dresden is our main character. He's a wizard in Chicago, and he practices private investigation, and he investigates like supernatural stuff. And that's kind of it. I went over all that in the first 3 reviews I did of his first 3 books. We won't rehash that. Let's talk about Changes. All of the good this, like I said, this is the book that changes everything in the Dresden Files story. He brings all the characters back together. You know, we get Susan Rodriguez, his ex-girlfriend. We get Martin, who's Susan's friend. We get Molly, Dresden's assistant. Probably my favorite character, by the way, Molly. We get Murphy the cop. Probably my second favorite character. I work in law enforcement. I can relate to Murphy the cop. I like Murphy the cop. She's cool, badass. She's been in every book. We get Ariana the vampire. We get the bad vampires. We get Ebenezer. We get everybody together. The basic plot is this. As every Dresden Files novel starts, you know, it's just like the detective sitting around in his office waiting for a case. And in walks a pretty girl asking him to solve a case of some kind. Well, this time, The pretty girl that walks into his life is his ex-wife. And she says, hey, our daughter's been kidnapped down in South America. And Harry Dresden's like, we don't have a daughter. And she's like, well, yeah, we do. He's like, what the beep? So then he finds out he got a daughter. Not only does he have a daughter, but his daughter's been kidnapped by a faction of drug lord vampires. Of all things, man, that would suck. That would suck, and it does. And that's where the adventure starts. I'm not going to get into anything else in the plot because, you know, you need to read the book and discover all the twists and turns and cool things that happen. But there's a lot of cool things. It is, up to this point, Changes, book number 12 in the Harry Dresden Files, is the coolest Dresden book to date. Bar none. I'm excited to, you know, after I read this book, I remember reading this book and going, holy shit. I mean, I got to find out what happens in the next book. Is there going to be a next book? Oh my God, what's going to happen? You know, this is a great, I mean, all of the characters, this is fantastic. It's kind of like the Lord of the Rings. All of the characters band together into a fellowship and they kind of go off on this Lord of the Rings type quest through the South American jungles, you know, to save this girl from the red vampires. And, you know, it's great. It's fantastic. And the end chapters are some of the most intense end chapters of any of the Harry Dresden novels. And I will tell you this right now, and I will stand by it. The very final page of this book has one of the most shocking endings in fantasy literature history. Those of you who read it know what I'm talking about. Those of you who haven't, I will not spoil it for you. But start at book 1, read all the way to book 12, and you will be left breathless with the last third of this book. I promise you that. So, great book. Like I said, I'm kind of cheating here. I read the first 3 books and reviewed them. Well, let's back up. I've read all the books before a long time ago in order as they came out, as they were published. Some of them, I mean, these are some of these books are 20, 21 years old. That's when I read them, right? But now I am rereading them for my reviews on YouTube. I did the first 3 reviews, decided to skip the next 8 books and go to book number 12, Changes, because I remembered it being the one book that really started to get me super, super interested in this series. And I give this one 9.5. Ooh, man, I almost want to give it 10. I almost want to give it a 10. Give it a 9.75. How's that? That's the first 9.75 I've ever given. Let's do that. It's that good. And I don't remember a whole lot about the next book, Ghost Story. I know I read it a long time ago. I don't remember a whole hell of a lot about it. So I'm excited to get to it. And I'm excited to get to the next 3 books in the series before his new one comes out in July. So, Changes by Jim Butcher, Harry Dresden. The Dresden Files. I've been holding this book upside down the entire time. And I'm just now realizing it. I'm telling you, the production value of these videos is off the charts. I'm telling you, folks, you can't get this kind of quality anywhere else.